hear what people are thinking about the economy. But more particularly, we're involved in a couple of sessions on practices in mining, both sustainability practices and anti-corruption measures in mining, which are very important for us as an industry.
Absolutely. And what's the conversation around that? Because we do know that there are big issues around corruption in mining. We've seen developments in South Africa where there have been deals that have been done that have raised questions around transparency and good governance.
Well, it really is about making sure that the leadership in the mining industry is a force for appropriate practices, and making sure that in all the jurisdictions we work, we're following the right sorts of practices and providing the right examples of how things should be done within the industry.
Let's talk about Africa, of course. Let's talk about Africa. Africa sits at a spot where, according to various international bodies, these prospects are extremely good. And yet we have seen some shocks coming through. We recently had the example of Ghana, where we saw taxes being raised to levels that some people were uncomfortable with. We also saw the same development happening in other countries outside of Africa. In terms of the countries where you are mining, are you concerned about regulatory developments, particularly around the two issues of one, taxes, and secondly, nationalization?
Well, I think the first thing to acknowledge is that commodity prices have been very strong, and communities are concerned, and it's sort of justified concern, that they may not be participating as much as they should. So I think it is fair and reasonable for communities, community members, politicians to raise the question of whether they should be seeing a better slice of the cake. And it's not that simple, but I think it's a fair question. Certainly, from our point of view, in terms of Africa, I think does have reason to be very optimistic. Africa is home to 40% of the world's natural resources, and so we talk about growth in China and India. It's not going to happen without Africa.
Are you guys not pulling out of Ghana?
No, absolutely not. I mean, the conversations in Ghana or anywhere else in Africa are around those, the allocation of resources, and at the moment we have stability agreements that protect us from a number of those announcements, but at the same time we look at what we can do in the community and can we do more, and we're working with the government on a range of fronts. But certainly it is a concern, particularly in industry that is still struggling to find more gold and deliver returns. I think we've got to be willing and able to talk to governments about the right cuts and the right issues. Nationalisation is a much bigger problem.
Yeah.
I think it's fair and reasonable to talk about sharing resources and the benefits of resources, but nationalisation has proven to be a problem wherever it's been introduced around the world. We don't have an example in the world where it's been successful.
Yeah.
And so from our point of view, we hope that the conversation remains sensible, remains about the role of mining in society and how we can make a better contribution.
Were you concerned when that remark came up from the ANC that nationalisation actually wasn't off the agenda, as some people were beginning to suggest?
Oh, no. I understand the ANC is going through a process,
right,
and we have to respect that process. We have to input and give our views, and to be fair to the ANC, they've allowed us the opportunity to have our say. I think they've made it very clear that it's not policy,
yeah,
but to also be fair, while you're going through policy formation processes, you do have to listen to all the arguments. So I think it's an open conversation. The one thing I would say is the quicker it is resolved, the better for all of us. That's all I ask.
Yeah, and it was supposed to have been resolved by November last year. The reports were supposed to have come out. Anyway, let's move on, because there are other issues that are facing the mining industry, particularly the gold miners. Costs. It's always a word that you associate with gold because it's such a difficult metal to get out of the ground.
Yeah.
Now, we have two big issues here. We've got wages on the one hand that the Reserve Bank is saying is concerned that they are accelerating at a faster pace than inflation, and at the same time, we also have, of course, the power costs, where now, in addition to those costs, we now have Eskom saying, hello guys, cut back.
Yeah.
How big a challenge is it?
There's significant issues, and for us, South Africa to remain committed, you have to remember that we have the deepest, most technically difficult deposits in the world. It doesn't get any tougher, and so we have to be competitive on productivity. So I think it's important we continue to pay good wages, but what we need to do is improve our production, and that means managers have to think differently, operators have to work differently, not harder. All of us have to work smart, and we have to do it together. And at the same time, we have to talk to Eskom, we have to talk to the government about how we keep all of our cost structures under control so we continue to grow and create jobs for South Africans.
Do you have a figure on perhaps the impact, the kind of impact that we're likely to see from the request from Eskom to cut back on power consumption? Is that likely to impact production at all?
Well, firstly, from a cost point of view, we have seen power costs go from 12% of our overall total cost structure to about 27% of our total cost structure. Massive increases, bigger than anything we've seen in the world. Now, the cost of power is still relatively competitive, although it's now getting to the point where it's a major problem for all of us. So a big issue has to have an impact. If you look at the closures we're now starting to see in zinc and other areas of the business, we're seeing closures as a consequence of those cost increases.